Amanda stood in my living room like she owned it. Her smile was as cold as December frost, and beside her sat a man in a gray suit, shuffling papers like a dealer setting up my funeral. "Dorothy," Amanda said sweetly, "this is Mr. Patterson. He's here to help us with some paperwork. Nothing serious, just making sure you're safe and taken care of. Safe and taken care of." The words wrapped in honey, but the taste in my mouth was bitter. My eyes darted to the documents on the table. Legal papers, the kind that change lives in silence and signatures. I forced a smile, though my heart thudded in my chest. "What sort of paperwork?" Amanda's gaze didn't waver. She leaned closer, lowering her voice as if she were breaking good news. "Michael and I thought it was time to make things official. About the house. About your future. You won't have to worry about a thing." The notary cleared his throat. "Mrs. Henderson, these are property transfer agreements. Once signed, your son and daughter-in-law will have full ownership of this residence. In return, your living arrangements at Sunset Manor will be secured." Sunset Manor. My stomach dropped. An assisted living facility. They weren't just nudging me toward retirement, they were boxing me up like last season's clothes and shipping me away. I wrapped my hands around my coffee mug, trying to steady the tremble. "Without asking me first?" Amanda's eyes flickered just a flash, but I saw it. That cold steel underneath her polished exterior. "We wanted it to be a surprise," she said gently, her tone dripping false concern. "Michael worries about you. You've seemed forgetful lately, and this way, we all know you'll be cared for." Forgetful. The word stabbed deeper than any knife. I was 68, not 98. My mind was sharp. But over the past few weeks, Amanda had been planting little seeds. Dorothy misplaced the groceries again. Dorothy forgot what day it was. Dorothy left the stove on. Lies told with a smile until they almost felt like truth. And now, the harvest of those lies was laid neatly on my living room table. I looked at the notary. His pen hovered nervously above the papers, like he wanted to be anywhere but here. He had no idea he was watching a daylight robbery unfold. "Where's Michael?" I asked, my voice steady though my insides burned. Amanda didn't blink. "He's at the gym. He found all this stressful, so I told him I'd handle it." Of course, he wasn't here. My son, my only child, had never been good at confrontation. Even as a boy, when he broke a neighbor's window, he made his girlfriend call me instead of facing me himself. Now he was 42 and still letting someone else do the dirty work. I took a slow sip of coffee, holding her gaze. "And what happens after that first year at Sunset Manor? After the so-called secured care?" Amanda tilted her head, the smile never fading. "Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it." Her words landed heavy. They weren't promising me a future, they were promising me disappearance. The notary cleared his throat again. "Mrs. Henderson, I need to inform you by signing. You give up all claims to the property. In return, your first year at the facility is covered. After that, well," his voice trailed off. Even he couldn't finish the sentence. I placed the mug down harder than I meant to. The sound echoed through the room. Amanda's smile flickered, but she quickly pulled it back into place. I stared at the woman who had just married my son. The woman I had welcomed into my family. The woman who had convinced me to move into their house temporarily after telling Michael I wasn't safe living alone. How blind I had been. Weeks of little manipulations, whispered doubts, subtle humiliations, all leading here. This was no surprise gift. This was an ambush. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw those papers into the fireplace and watch them burn to ash. But instead, I smiled. A smile just as cold as hers. "I'll need some time to think," I said. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't falter. That calm, measured tone was the only weapon I had in that moment. Amanda's mask slipped. Just for a heartbeat. Her jaw tightened. "Dorothy, Mr. Patterson has other appointments today. It would be much more convenient if we just handled this now." Convenient. For her. For Michael. Not for me. "I'm not signing anything today," I replied, locking eyes with the notary. Relief washed over his face like he'd been holding his breath. "Of course, Mrs. Henderson," he said quickly. "Take all the time you need. These are big decisions." Amanda's hand curled into a fist against her silk dress, but her voice stayed soft. "We're only doing this because we love you." Love. That word from her lips felt poisonous. If this was love, what did betrayal look like? After they left, The silence of the house pressed in on me. The same walls I had painted, the same floors I had polished, the same roof I had helped pay for. And now, my son's wife wanted to erase me from it. Amanda thought I was blind, thought her sweet smile and careful lies would break me. But she forgot one thing: I had been Michael's mother for 42 years. I had raised him through storms and struggles long before she ever came into his life. And I had learned how to play the long game. So I sat there, staring at the papers she left behind, and whispered to myself, "You've underestimated me, Amanda. And that will be your greatest mistake. Because if you're wondering how I ended up standing in my own living room with a notary and a daughter-in-law trying to steal my home, well, buckle up. It all started 48 hours earlier. At the wedding, 2 days before Amanda stood in my living room with her notary, I had watched her walk down the aisle in white. The church was the same one where I had married Michael's father 35 years ago. The same stone walls, the same stained glass windows that threw rainbow light across the pews. But instead of joy and hope, that day the air felt heavier, as if even God himself was holding his breath. I sat in the front pew, clutching the small bouquet of roses I had brought for Amanda. My heart ached, but I told myself this was a new beginning. After all, wasn't that what weddings were supposed to be? A chance for families to come together, to start fresh? Amanda looked radiant as she floated down the aisle. Her smile shone for everyone watching, but when her eyes brushed past me, I swear I saw something colder there. A glint, sharp and calculating. Still, I forced myself to believe I was being unfair. Maybe it was just nerves. Maybe she was just tired. When the vows were said and the rings were exchanged, the crowd cheered. Michael kissed his bride, and for a moment, I allowed myself to feel hope. Hope that this woman could bring him joy, that maybe she and I could find common ground. But hope is a fragile thing. It can be crushed in an instant. The reception was held at the country club, the same country club where I had worked double shifts years ago, pouring coffee and balancing trays, just to pay Michael's tuition. I never imagined I'd stand in that ballroom again, this time as a guest. I had saved every spare dollar for months, skipping meals, choosing generic cereal, walking instead of driving to give Michael and Amanda $15,000 for their wedding and the down payment on their home. It was everything I had managed to scrape together from my Social Security checks. I thought it was love. To Amanda, it was leverage. During dinner, Amanda stood up to toast. She looked out at the room with a smile sweet enough to rot teeth. "We couldn't have done any of this without Michael's mother," she said, her voice carrying like a bell. "Dorothy has been such a help. She's been living with us for months, and she even helped us with the house down payment. Such a generous mother-in-law." Her words hung in the air, and I felt the eyes of the table turn toward me. Some smiled politely, but others gave each other knowing glances. To them, I was no longer Dorothy, the woman who had worked and sacrificed for her family. I was a burden, a dependent. Amanda wasn't praising me. She was branding me. What she didn't say was that I hadn't been living with them by choice. She had convinced Michael that my small apartment wasn't safe. "What if she falls? What if something happens and no one knows for hours?" she'd said, eyes brimming with concern. Within weeks, I'd been moved into their spare room. A temporary solution, she had called it. Temporary had quickly turned permanent. And that $15,000? To Amanda, it wasn't a loan. It wasn't even an act of love. She presented it to the world as a gift, as though I had emptied my pockets because I couldn't let go of my grown son. The applause that followed her toast was hesitant, uncertain. No one knew if they should clap or feel sorry for me. I sat there frozen, my cheeks burning as though every eye in the room was stripping me bare. Then came the speeches. Michael, glass in hand, stood proudly. "I want to thank everyone who made this day possible. My beautiful wife, our families, and of course, my mother, who has always been there when we needed her." Polite applause. Nothing unusual. Then Amanda rose again. "I also want to say something about Dorothy." She turned to me with a smile so wide it looked painted on. "She's taught me so much about loyalty and family. Real mothers never stop caring for their children, no matter how old they are. Some mothers, when their sons get married, step back, but not Dorothy. She's shown me that a mother's job is never truly done." A few people chuckled. Others shifted uncomfortably. Amanda wasn't done. "She even helps us financially. Because that's what mothers do. They sacrifice everything for their children's happiness." The silence that followed was deafening. I sat there, my heart pounding, my breath caught in my throat. I had just been turned into a living cautionary tale. A woman who didn't know when to let go. A mother who clung too tightly. Amanda had taken my sacrifice and twisted it into shame. I glanced at Michael, hoping he would correct her. Hoping he would tell the room the truth, that the down payment had been a loan, not a gift, that I hadn't moved in because I was frail but because Amanda had insisted. But Michael just smiled and raised his glass. That was the moment something inside me cracked. I had given them my money. I had given them my trust. And in return, Amanda had stolen my dignity in front of everyone I knew. As the laughter and chatter resumed, I forced myself to smile, to clap, to act as though nothing had happened. But inside, I was screaming. Later, alone in the restroom, I locked the stall and pressed my hands against the cool wall. My reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, cheeks flushed, eyes wide, lips trembling. I whispered to myself, stay calm, don't let her win. But deep down, I knew that night wasn't about family or celebration. It was the opening move in Amanda's game. And the worst was yet to come, because when I woke the next morning, I found Amanda sitting at the kitchen table with a man in a gray suit, papers spread before her like a trap. That was the moment I realized the wedding wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of a war. The morning after the wedding, I woke up in their house, what Amanda had started calling their house, as if I were just a guest who had overstayed her welcome. The scent of coffee drifted through the air, but when I walked into the kitchen, the sight that greeted me made my stomach twist. Amanda sat at the table, perfectly composed in a silk robe, her hair already brushed into place. Across from her sat a man in a gray suit. A black briefcase rested beside his chair. Papers were spread neatly in front of him like a trap disguised as breakfast. Dorothy. Amanda's voice was bright, sugar sweet, almost too sweet. Good morning. Did you sleep well? I poured myself a cup of coffee, gripping the mug tightly so my trembling hands wouldn't give me away. Well enough. Who's this? Amanda's smile widened. This is Mr. Patterson, from Sterling Legal Services. He's here to help us with some paperwork. Michael and I have been talking, and we think it's time to make a few changes. For your safety. For your safety. Those words again. Always wrapped in concern, always hiding a blade beneath. The man cleared his throat politely. Mrs. Henderson, your son and daughter-in-law have asked me to assist with some legal documents. It's about the property and your living arrangements. I took a slow sip of coffee. What kind of arrangements? Amanda reached across the table and touched the papers like they were precious. You've been so generous, helping us with the down payment. And we want to make sure you're cared for as you get older. Michael and I have already put down a deposit at Sunset Manor. It's a lovely place, 24-hour care, social activities, even a library. You'd love it. Her eyes sparkled as she said it, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. My mug clinked harder than I intended as I set it down. Without asking me, Amanda's voice softened, but her eyes stayed sharp. We wanted it to be a surprise. Michael worries about you. And frankly, Dorothy, you've seemed forgetful lately. That word again, forgetful. It sliced through me like a knife. The notary adjusted his glasses. Mrs. Henderson, these documents would transfer full ownership of the property to your son and daughter-in-law. In exchange, the costs of your care would be covered for the first year. 1 year? I asked, my voice colder now. And after that? Amanda gave a delicate shrug. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Maybe you'll like it so much you won't want to leave. The casual cruelty of her words stole my breath. I wasn't a guest being offered comfort. I was being caged. And Michael? I asked quietly. Why isn't he here for this conversation? Amanda didn't miss a beat. He's at the gym. He found this all a little stressful, so he left it to me. Of course he had. My son had always avoided conflict, always let others speak for him when the words got too heavy. But this was beyond cowardice. The notary shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Henderson, I should also note that these documents would release you from any financial responsibility for the property. You'd be fully supported in Sunset Manor. Supported. That was a neat way of saying stripped. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my face neutral even as my heart thundered. Amanda thought she had me cornered, thought her months of planting doubts and whispering lies had weakened me enough to sign away my life, but she didn't know me. Not really. I smiled, matching hers with one just as practiced. I'll need some time to think about it. Amanda's mask flickered. For a second, her jaw tightened, her hand curled into a fist, but she recovered quickly. Dorothy, it would be more convenient if we handled this today. Mr. Patterson has other appointments. Convenience, I said softly. For you? Maybe. Not for me. I'm not signing anything today. The notary actually looked relieved, his pen sliding back into his pocket. Of course. Take all the time you need, Mrs. Henderson. These are big decisions. Amanda's smile didn't waver, but I saw the storm behind her eyes. We're only doing this because we love you, she said gently. Love. The word curdled in my stomach. After they left, I sat in the silence of the kitchen, staring at the papers they had left behind. Sunset Manor, property transfer, signatures. That would erase me from my own home. Amanda thought she had everything lined up. The notary, the documents, the lies about forgetfulness, the absence of my son. But she'd made one mistake. She had forgotten who I was. I wasn't just some frail old woman to be shuffled away. I was a mother who had survived widowhood, worked double shifts, and built a life from nothing. I had been underestimated before, and I had always found a way to rise. That morning, as I folded the documents and tucked them into my own purse, I whispered to myself, not this time, Amanda. You won't take everything from me, not without a fight. And that fight? It was only just beginning. When the front door closed behind the notary, the house fell quiet to quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own heartbeat. I stood there in the kitchen with the papers Amanda had left, like a trap still open, waiting for me to step into it. I didn't. I picked them up, slid them into my purse, and breathed. If Amanda wanted a quick signature, she should have asked a stranger. I wasn't a stranger to this house or to the way people hide their intentions behind polite voices. First, I made a list. That's what I do when the world spins. Find original deed. Find proof of the $15,000 loan. Check power of attorney details. Call my doctor. Document everything. I took out a small spiral notebook, the cheap kind with a bent corner and a coffee stain, and wrote the date at the top. Then I wrote the first entry, 8:17 a.m. notary at kitchen table. Property transfer. Amanda says it's for my safety. Michael not present. I underlined it twice. The documents I needed weren't in the hall file cabinet. They wouldn't be. Amanda had pushed me for months to move important items. Somewhere safe, in her language, meant away from me. Their bedroom closet, top shelf, behind a decorative box exactly where I'd watched her tuck the fireproof case the day we moved me in. I waited until she left for her manicure. She always left a cloud of perfume behind, like ownership in a bottle. I climbed the step stool and pulled down the case. The key? In my purse. I never forgot that part. No matter how many times Amanda hinted I misplaced things, the lid opened with a stubborn click. There it was. The deed to names on the page. Michael Henderson and Dorothy Henderson. Mine beside his. I traced the letters with my finger, a small act of defiance, like telling the paper, I'm still here. Next, the canceled check, $15,000. Memo line. Down payment loan. I photographed it on my phone. Then the power of attorney packet Michael had pushed in front of me months ago, when Amanda's concern began to sound like a chorus. Just in case, Dorothy. It's easier for everyone, Dorothy. I remembered. Sitting at my lawyer's desk back then, refusing to sign until she added one line I demanded, conditional upon written evaluations by 2 independent physicians confirming incapacity. I found that page, highlighted exactly where that clause lived, and snapped a picture. I wrote another entry, 9:03 a.m. found deed both names, loan proof check, PO clause to doctor rule. Underneath I wrote, I am not incompetent. Then I drew a box around it. I pulled out a stack of sticky notes and labeled each folder with a single word, deed, loan, POA. Then I flipped to a clean page in my notebook and began a timeline. I wrote dates in short lines like a detective who's tired of being the suspect. March 15. Amanda says I left the stove on. Breakfast was toast. No stove. March 22nd. She tells Michael I forgot dinner plans. She canceled them that morning. April 3rd. Can't follow conversations. She was whispering. I asked her to speak up. April 18th. Told neighbor I lost track of the day. I had the flu. Asked if Tuesday or Wednesday. Reading the list felt like looking at fingerprints, hers all over my life. Quiet smears of doubt. Little stories that made me smaller each time she told them. One by one, she shifted the light until any shadow could be called decline. I kept writing. May 7th. Worries about driving, I passed my renewal test. June 1st, money fixation, I asked for a copy of the mortgage statement. June 15th, misplaced groceries, she rearranged the pantry. I numbered the entries, then circled the pattern. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was a campaign. Anger warmed me, but clarity steadied me. This wasn't about proving I was perfect. It was about proving I was competent and that Amanda was not my guardian angel. She was a strategist, and I had finally learned the rules of her game. I called Dr. Chen's office and asked for the earliest appointment. Routine evaluation, I said. I'll bring paperwork. My voice didn't shake. I also called the bank and requested copies of the deposit records that showed where my $15,000 went. Then I called my lawyer and left a message. We need to talk about elder abuse statutes. Amanda breezed in around noon, smiling like the morning never happened. She set down a shopping bag, kissed the air near my cheek, and peered at the cleared kitchen table. Did you look over the papers? She asked. I did, I said. I'm making a list of questions. She hates lists. Lists are proof. Michael really wants to be sure you're safe, she said gently, eyes sweeping the counter. Did you have lunch? Sometimes you forget to eat. Sometimes you forget I can cook, I replied, opening the fridge. Blueberry pancakes for breakfast. I think that covers it. A flicker, like a pinhole tear in a painted sky. She smoothed it over with a hum and strolled to the sink, glancing at my purse on the chair. Too casual. I watched her reflection. In the microwave door, the way her eyes darted, the way her hand brushed the strap. I moved the purse to my lap. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. How did it go this morning? No apology, no courage. Just a question about whether I'd let his wife escort me out of my life. We'll talk later, I typed. Then I locked my screen and wrote another line in my notebook. 12:14 p.m. Amanda watching my purse. After lunch, I carried the fireproof case back to their closet. But not before I made my own copy packet, 3 manila envelopes, each labeled, each sealed. One went into my purse, one into the trunk of my car, one under the cushion of the old armchair in the den, the only thing in this house that felt like it belonged to me. By late afternoon, the plan forming in my mind had bones. I would collect proof, secure medical letters, and schedule a quiet conversation with a detective whose card I still had from a senior center seminar. I would not shout. I would not panic. I would not sign. I brewed tea. The kettle sang. Amanda drifted into the kitchen at the sound, smiling like nothing bad ever begins with tea. Oh, she said lightly. Before I forget, funny thing. I cleaned the hall drawer yesterday. Found a prescription bottle in your purse. Xanax, not your name on the label. She tilted her head, studying my face. Should we be worried? I felt the room tilt a few degrees, then settle. Give it to me, I said. She widened her eyes. Oh, I already put it back. You left your purse on the chair this morning. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. I kept my voice even. I'm fine. She sipped her tea, watching me over the rim. Good, because, Dorothy, if anyone ever asked me, I'd have to tell them what I found. For your safety. Her smile was soft. Her meaning was sharp. I wrote one last line in my notebook. 4:41 p.m. pills. Threat. Then I closed it and slid it into my pocket. Amanda thought she'd cornered me. But the thing about corners is they make you study the room. And when you study the room, you discover doors. If you want to know where my door led, it opened the very next morning, first to my doctor, and then, unexpectedly, to the police. The next morning, I made blueberry pancakes. That was my ritual. When I needed clarity, stirring batter, watching blueberries bleed purple into the dough, flipping them until golden, it grounded me. It reminded me I was still in control of something, no matter how small. Amanda floated into the kitchen wearing silk pajamas, as if she were starring in her own movie. She inhaled the sweet scent and smiled. What's the occasion? No occasion, I said, sliding a pancake onto her plate. Just felt like cooking. She cut into it with precise little motions, like a surgeon with a scalpel. I hope you've had time to think about our conversation yesterday. Mr. Patterson called. He can come back this afternoon if you're ready. I sat across from her, fork in hand, calm masking the storm inside me. I've been thinking. Her eyes lit up, expectant, confident. She thought she had me. I just want to understand something, I said softly. What made you decide I needed assisted living? Amanda blinked, caught off guard. Well, as I said, your age, your safety. No, I interrupted. Specifically, what happened that made you believe I wasn't safe? She hesitated, then waved her fork. It's not about one incident, Dorothy. It's about overall vulnerability. Name one, I pressed. A fall? Forgetting medication? Leaving the stove on? Her smile faltered. It's not about waiting for something terrible to happen. It's about being proactive. So, I said slowly, there hasn't been a single concrete incident, just stories. The air thickened. Amanda's fork clinked against the plate. You've been building a case, I continued, piece by piece, whisper by whisper. Every time I asked you to repeat yourself, you called it confusion. Every time I misplaced something, you called it decline. You've been painting me as weak, as forgetful, as incompetent. Amanda's voice tightened. We're trying to help you. No, I said, my tone sharpening. You're trying to help yourselves to my house. The words hung heavy between us. Her chair scraped loudly as she stood. How dare you? After everything we've done for you. I looked up at her, calm as steel. What exactly have you done for me? Convince my son I was unsafe? Move me into your spare room? Twist my gift into a chain around my neck? Her face hardened. The sweetness? Gone. You can't let go, Dorothy. That's your problem. You can't accept that Michael has a wife now, a family of his own. You want to keep control over him. Even now, her words pierced me, not because they were true, but because they carried slivers of truth sharpened into knives. Yes, I had struggled to let go. Yes, I still thought of Michael as my boy, but that didn't make me blind. That didn't mean I was senile. I steadied my breath. Even if what you said was true, it doesn't justify tricking me out of my home. Amanda laughed, sharp and brittle. Tricking you? You gave us that money. You chose to move in here. Nobody forced you. Not directly, I said. But you eroded me, drip by drip. You wore me down until I second-guessed myself. Her eyes flashed, and for a second, I saw the truth cold, calculated, ruthless. I opened my notebook and slid it across the table. She glanced down. Her face paled as she read the entries. March 15th, March 22nd, April 3rd. Every incident documented, every manipulation recorded. You've been setting this up for months, I said. And I've been watching. Her lips parted, but no words came. I pulled the canceled check from my purse and laid it beside the notebook. The word loan written in my handwriting, in permanent ink. Then the deed with both names. Then the power of attorney. Clause with its 2-doctor safeguard. Amanda's composure cracked. She looked smaller, cornered. You've underestimated me, I said quietly. I may be old, Amanda, but I'm not weak. And I'm not alone. Because these papers don't just prove you're wrong, they prove you've been lying. Amanda's hands shook as she reached for the documents, but I pulled them back. Her mask shattered completely. You selfish, bitter old woman, she hissed. Do you have any idea what you're doing to Michael? To our marriage? I leaned closer, my voice steady. No, Amanda, do you have any idea what you're doing to me? To the mother who raised him, who sacrificed everything. You're destroying this family, not me. Her face flushed red. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For the first time since she entered my life, Amanda had no script, and in that silence, I realized something important. The woman across from me wasn't a loving wife. She wasn't a caring daughter-in-law. She was a predator, and predators don't stop until you stop them. I stood, gathering the papers. Enjoy your pancakes, I said softly. They're the last meal you'll eat while thinking you've already won. I walked out of the kitchen, heart pounding but back straight, clutching my proof like a shield. Amanda thought she'd written the final chapter of my life. She had no idea I was just beginning mine, because the web she had spun was about to unravel. The morning air in the house was tense, like a storm about to break. Amanda thought I was cornered, but what she didn't realize was that I had already set my pieces on the board. At 1:45 p.m., the doorbell rang. Right on schedule. Mr. Patterson Stethery. Weeks after I carried my suitcase out of Michael and Amanda's house, I sat in my new apartment. It was small, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a tiny balcony that overlooked a park. But it was mine. Every plant, every dish, every framed photograph belonged to me, and no one could take it away. The silence was different here. Not heavy, not suffocating. It was peaceful. Then the phone rang. Detective Rodriguez. His voice was steady, professional. Mrs. Henderson, I thought you'd want to know. We've moved forward with charges against Amanda Henderson, elder financial abuse, fraud, and attempted coercion. We're bringing her in tomorrow morning. I closed my eyes. Relief washed over me, followed by sadness. Not for her but for Michael, for the grandchild who would grow up with this legacy. The next day, I got the call. Amanda had been arrested outside her prenatal appointment. She'd shouted my name as the police cuffed her wrists, blaming me even as the evidence piled up. That afternoon, Michael called. His voice was hollow. "Mom, Amanda's in jail. She says you set her up. She says you wanted revenge." I took a breath. No, Michael. What I wanted was justice. She tried to take my home, my money, my independence. This isn't revenge. It's the law. Silence stretched between us. Then he whispered, "I don't know who to believe anymore." Then, "Look at the proof," I said gently. "Look at the loan papers, the deed, the emails, the notebook. Don't look at words, Michael. Look at facts." He didn't answer, but a week later, he showed up at my apartment. His face was pale, his eyes red-rimmed. In his arms, he carried a small bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. "Mom," he said softly, "I'd like you to meet your granddaughter, Emma Dorothy Henderson." My knees nearly gave out. He placed the baby in my arms, her tiny fists curling, her eyelids fluttering. She was perfect, innocent, untouched by the lies that had nearly destroyed us. Tears slid down my cheeks. "She's beautiful," I whispered. Michael sat heavily on the couch. I filed for divorce. Once Amanda's lawyer showed me the full scope of her past, I couldn't deny it anymore. This wasn't her first time. There were others, other families, other victims. My chest ached. "And you?" He looked down. "I feel like a fool. I let her manipulate me. I let her use me against you. And now, my daughter, she'll grow up knowing her mother's in prison." I touched his hand. "Emma will grow up knowing the truth. That matters more than lies. And she'll grow up knowing her father faced his mistakes and chose better." Michael's tears fell freely. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." I held his hand tighter. "Forgiveness isn't about deserving, Michael. It's about freeing yourself. You're my son. I will always love you. But you have to rebuild trust, not just with me but with yourself." He nodded, broken but determined. Months passed. Amanda pled guilty. 18 months in state prison, 3 years probation. Full restitution of the money she tried to steal. I sat in the courtroom as the judge read her sentence. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. No designer clothes, no perfect makeup, no practiced smile. Just a woman stripped bare by her own choices. She glared at me once, her eyes burning with hatred. But I didn't look away. I didn't gloat. I simply met her gaze and let her see the quiet strength she had underestimated. After the gavel fell, I walked outside with Michael and baby Emma. The spring sun felt warm on my face. For the first time in months, I felt free. Michael turned to me. "Mom, what happens now?" I smiled faintly. "Now we rebuild. Not the house Amanda tried to steal. Not the family she pretended to create. The real family, ours." Weeks later, Michael sold the house. He gave me half of the proceeds, his attempt to make things right. He moved into a smaller place just 3 blocks from me. Twice a week, he and Emma came over for dinner. We'd sit on my little balcony, Emma gurgling on a blanket, Michael and I talking about everything except Amanda. Sometimes Patricia, Amanda's mother, joined us. She brought casseroles and stories, her own eyes heavy with regret. One evening she whispered, "I failed to teach Amanda integrity, but I'll help Emma learn it." I believed her. One afternoon, Emma took her first steps in my living room, wobbling toward me with determination in her tiny eyes. Michael laughed and cried at the same time. And I thought to myself, this is what survival looks like. This is what victory feels like. Amanda had tried to erase me, to lock me away in Sunset Manor and write me out of my own story. But instead, she gave me the greatest gift, clarity. The reminder that I was stronger than her lies, sharper than her manipulation, and worth more than her schemes. As I tucked Emma into my arms that night, I kissed her soft head and whispered, "Remember this, little one, people will try to make you small so they can feel bigger. Don't let them. Stand tall, fight back, and never, ever give away your power." The moonlight spilled through my window, painting silver across the floor. The house was quiet. My heart was steady. Amanda had taken my peace for a time, but she hadn't won. She never would. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't a courtroom victory. Sometimes it isn't restitution or prison sentences. Sometimes the best revenge is living well. And as Emma's tiny fingers curled around mine, I knew I had won.